When the Spanish first arrived in the Americas, they weren't just chasing gold. They were about to reshape an entire hemisphere. According to Wikipedia and records preserved by the Smithsonian Institution, a series of expeditions between the late 1400s and early 1500s would set off one of the most dramatic transformations in human history. Some call it exploration, some call it conquest. But behind the familiar story lies a deeper, stranger chapter that textbooks often skip. In 1492, when Christopher Columbus reached the Caribbean under the Spanish crown, he believed he had found a new route to Asia. But Spain quickly realized the truth. This was an entirely new world to Europe, filled with civilizations they had never imagined. Declassified maritime records analyzed by the Library of Congress show that by the early 1500s, fleets of Spanish ships were crossing the Atlantic regularly. They carried soldiers, missionaries, administrators, and a blueprint for expansion. This wasn't a slow process. Within decades, Spain established control over vast regions: the Caribbean, Central America, large parts of South America, and territory that would later become the American Southwest. And this is where the mystery deepens. How did a relatively small European kingdom project power across continents so quickly? According to History.com and early chronicles by Spanish writers like Bernal Díaz del Castillo, the conquests were a mix of alliance, warfare, and strategic intelligence. Hernán Cortés didn't defeat the Aztec Empire alone. He forged alliances with indigenous groups already hostile to the Aztec rule. Francisco Pizarro confronted an Inca empire destabilized by civil war. But the factor historians emphasize most, referenced heavily in the New York Times history archives, was disease. European illnesses like smallpox spread faster than armies could march, reshaping entire societies before Spain even reached them. Yet the story isn't just conflict. The Spanish established universities, administrative cities, and trade networks that connected the Americas to Europe, Africa, and Asia for the first time. But there's a moment in this story that many people overlook, one that changes how we understand the entire colonization process. Because halfway through the Spanish expansion, something happened that loops back to the very beginning of their mission. According to documents preserved in Spain's General Archive of the Indies, the Spanish crown realized the lands they claimed were far larger than expected. So in 1532, they issued the new laws, an attempt to limit abuses and restructure the entire colonization system. A sudden burst of reform, not driven by moral awakening alone, but because the empire had grown too quickly for Madrid to control. In other words, the same rapid expansion that brought Spain power also threatened to tear that power apart. This tension shaped centuries of colonial life. Life under Spanish rule was a complex mixture of indigenous, African, and European cultures. According to cultural research published by the Museum of the Americas in Madrid, the blending of languages, religions, agricultural techniques, and architectural styles created something entirely new, a world neither fully Spanish nor fully indigenous. Cities like Mexico City, Lima, and Bogotá became administrative hubs filled with plazas, cathedrals, and universities. Spanish was not imposed overnight. It evolved through generations of cultural exchange. And yet, throughout these changes, indigenous resistance remained constant, from local uprisings to large-scale rebellions documented in colonial archives. The colonization shaped the Americas, but the Americas also reshaped Spain. If you lived during that time, do you think you would have seen the Spanish arrival as opportunity or threat? Tell me your perspective. The comments reveal as much history as the episode itself. The Spanish colonization of the Americas wasn't a single event. It was a centuries-long collision of empires, ideas, cultures, and beliefs, one that still defines nations across the Western Hemisphere today. And understanding it means looking past the surface, into the documents, maps, and stories that shaped an entire world. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden chapters of history, not for numbers, but as part of a small community that loves exploring the past, then stay with me. Like, share, and subscribe only if you want to be part of this journey. Because the next episode takes us into another turning point in world history, one even more surprising than this.